Cinema lenses. They are a piece of gear that every camera beginner at some point aspires to use. The problem is, even budget cine lenses can feel unattainable for a large number of people due to the cost of entry of an entire set. Thypoch, however, seems determined to put cinema lenses into the hands of as many people as possible with the release of the Simera-Cs. So today I'm going to show you guys some footage I've shot with these lenses both on a project and over the period that I had them on loan. And we'll find out together whether these lenses are too good to be true. We will cover the physical design, the look, my experience with them, what I didn't like, how they compare in the market, and who I think they are best suited for. Let's get started. If you aren't familiar with Thypoch as a brand, they are a relatively new sister brand created by D0 Film, who are one of the most popular manufacturers for this affordable tier of cine lenses. Thypoch started out with their Simera line of stills lenses targeted at photography users who wanted a high-quality manual lens experience without breaking the bank. This includes the Thypoch Simera 28mm f1.4 lens that I reviewed a couple of months ago. The Simera-Cs are an extension of this lens line with some key physical design differences. Unlike the stills version of the Simera-Cs have a 16 blade aperture, which should yield a more circular look to out of focus elements, which we will explore a bit later in this video. The second prominent change from the stills version of the Simeras is the aperture and focus rings are flipped to the standard layout that the majority of cine lenses follow, the focus ring at the front with a declicked aperture at the back. For this review, Thypoch was able to loan me the entire currently available set, which consists of the 28mm, 35mm, 50mm, 75mm, and then there's a 21mm that I did not test, but should be released slightly later than these initial four. All lenses open up to a fast T1.5 and cover an image circle of 43.2mm, or in other words, basically all full frame cameras. From a build standpoint, these lenses feel great. At under 400 grams each, with the exception of the 75mm, which is 450 grams, these are extremely compact and portable. To give you a sense of the size, I can fit 3 of these lenses with a Sony ZV-E10 Mark II in my 6-liter Wandered sling bag with room to spare for small accessories. It feels almost silly to think that you can carry a set of 3 cinema lenses and a small camera like this in an everyday bag. The focus ring on each of these lenses has 210 degrees of rotation and is well dampened. This is a really good focus throw for any camera setup using a motor for focus and is fairly usable for manual focus by hand on the lens as well, if your focus poles aren't traveling more than half the range of the lens at a time. The focus marks on the lens itself are in metric and imperial, which has become a common practice for a lot of lens manufacturers. As someone who doesn't live in the US, I appreciate this. When focusing, there is no extension of the front of the lens, so you won't have any issues with accessories due to any moving elements. 3 of the 4 lenses have a 62mm front filter diameter with a 67mm outer front, with space for a clamp-on matte box, with the 75mm having a 67mm front filter diameter and a 72mm outer diameter. During my roughly 2 months with these lenses, I used them on a documentary style project that I will talk about in detail in my next video, as well as testing them both in the studio and walking around the city. It feels like Thypoch took a very thoughtful approach to the look of these lenses because I think the best way I can describe the look is well balanced. I shot these lenses mostly on my Fujifilm X-H2S and the Sony ZV-E10 II, both of which are Super 35, so I got a good sense of what the center performance of these lenses are, and I was really impressed with how they looked wide open. I was shooting this doc project with my 94-year-old grandmother, and these lenses felt like the perfect tool for this project look-wise. They were sharp enough in the center while still providing a flattering overall look that has a vintage quality as the focus falls off towards the edges of the frame. I think this look is best demonstrated in close-ups because these lenses have a very solid minimum focus that not only looks great, but never felt like a limitation due to not being able to get as close as I wanted. The bokeh on these lenses has a very desirable, smooth look that I personally really like. I did, however, experience some instances where, depending on the content of the background, the transition from the center of the frame can have some noticeable fuzzy texture to it before it smooths out at the edges. This is very context dependent and overall minor in my opinion, since I think the look is distinctive and very versatile. Since the foundation of these lenses is a stills design, they do showcase some breathing, which didn't bother me personally for the way that I like to shoot. But if you're someone who can't really tolerate breathing, then this is something to keep in mind. Flaring on these lenses can look really good, and for the most part, I was happy with the flaring results that I got. However, I do think there is some inconsistency with the look of the flare, so it will really be context and light source dependent in order to look good. Overall, I'd say there are many other lenses I've used which I prefer the flare more than the Simera-Cs, so I'd treat these lenses as a set where you don't go out of your way to flare them, but if the light source and location provides the right circumstances, there will be instances where I think it can look really good. The dock shoot I used the Simera-Cs on was relatively fast paced since I was shooting on my own from a camera perspective. We were also shooting in public for about 35% of the shoot, which really cemented to me how amazing the size of these lenses are. I paired them with the Sony ZV-E10 II, and to me this felt like a nearly perfect match. Each time we shot out in public, we were there for less than an hour in each location, and because this camera package was so small, I didn't really draw too much unwanted attention from anyone, allowing us to move fast and get the shots we needed. For the indoor location work on this project, I shot handheld with a focus motor rigged to the lenses and pulled focus with my nucleus and wireless handle. This setup worked really well for my needs. Focus changes were smooth, and I found myself not really thinking about the lenses at all as the shoot went on, which is definitely a compliment to how well built they are mechanically. It's always a win whenever your gear doesn't get in your way. My review units of these lenses were all in M mount, and I think this is a great choice by Thypoch, because as I've said on this channel many times before, M mount is one of the most adaptable mounts around, so it's a great way to give lenses a long life into the future. You also get the added benefit of many manufacturers making helicoid adapters for the M mount lenses that allow you to expand the close focus ability of the Simera-Cs. This gives you the ability to do macro shots with them when needed. This brings me to the close focus ability of these lenses. The 28mm, 35mm, and 50mm all have a minimum focus of 0.45 meters, which is pretty good for lenses in this price tier, especially for the 28mm. The 75mm has a close focus of 0.55 meters, which is also solid for a telephoto focal length. If you need closer than that, you might want to look at lenses with macro capability. For all the praise for these lenses so far, I do have to note a few cons. To start, because of their small size, the iris ring is quite close to the lens mount. This isn't an issue if you never put a motor on your iris, but if you ever find yourself needing to rig one, you may run into clearance issues on your camera because it's unlikely two motors will fit on the same side of the lens. This is definitely solvable, and I don't think it'll be a super common need for the target demographic of these lenses, but it's still something to be aware of. Also, if you do wait for the release of the M mount version of these lenses, the one downside to them is the same issue that plagues mirrorless cameras anytime you adapt lenses, which is play in the lens mount itself that can show up from a focus motor setup that torques the lens, ultimately adding bumps to your footage. Now, I'm not sure if the E mount version of these lenses exhibits this problem because I did not test that version of the set, but I assume that it's less likely to be an issue because native lenses generally fare better in this regard. This is mainly just a trade-off in making cinema lenses for a mirrorless system. They don't have the added security options like lens support threads or the rigidity that a PL mount offers. My final note isn't necessarily a con, but will depend on your taste. These lenses and the look of them are clearly aimed right in the middle between sharpness and a vintage vibe. But to some, they may not be quite sharp enough or vintage enough, so it just depends on if you are someone who prefers to be on either end of that spectrum, then these might not be for you. When comparing the Simera-Cs to other lens sets on the market, there really isn't a direct comparison. Thypoch clearly designed the Simera-Cs to fill a unique niche. There are no other lenses that are this size, cover full frame, open to T1.5, and hit this under $900 price point. The closest lens set to these would probably be the Nisi Athena primes, which are targeted at a similar tier of user, but they sell for $1,200 per lens. The Athenas are also larger lenses at twice the weight of the Simera-Cs, so they offer a very different user experience. They also have a very different look, aiming for a more clean, sharp image with as little vintage quality as possible, so again, not a direct comparison. There are many factors to consider when choosing a set of lenses, especially to own, so you need to weigh what your practical needs are with what your taste is to find the right set for your project or for you to just own in general. Now, before we talk about whether the Simera-Cs are a good investment, I want to talk about one thing that is a good investment, and that is today's sponsor, Motion Array. Motion Array is a marketplace with a ton of video templates, stock footage, photos, music, sound effects, and they also have a brand new feature called VoiceOver. Here's how it works. You go to the VoiceOver tab, choose a voice that you want to try out, type out your script, and then in a matter of seconds, you have a voiceover that you can use. This is a really interesting tool to option different styles of voices for whatever piece of content you are making. I honestly see this as a great tool to utilize in your pre-production process because you can trial a wide variety of voices to see what may or may not work best for the tone of your project. Let's say you were making a video pitch for like a series or just some sort of funding. You could use the voiceover feature to add an extra touch of professionalism and personality to your pitch. This would also be an excellent tool for anyone doing their own self-funded spec work to gain access to a voiceover that you would otherwise not be able to afford. You have the ability to change the speed and emotion of the voiceover, and you can sort the available options by gender or video category. Let's listen to a couple of examples.
Puffins are sometimes called clowns of the sea, as they spend most of their lives out at sea. You can find them inhabiting the eastern coast of Canada, the United States, and Europe's western coast.
The Tokyo Scramble is one of the most well-known sites in Japan. It's been the setting for scenes in countless films and is a must-visit for anyone who comes to Tokyo.
If you want to save time and stress while streamlining your creative process, you can check out everything that Motion Array has to offer at the first link in the video description. The Thypoch Simera-Cs are a really unique set of lenses, and at less than $3,200 USD for the set of 4, I think they are an excellent value. Thypoch has managed to strike a really great balance between sharp performance where it matters and a vintage aesthetic that I think will please many end users. If you are someone who typically shoots on your own or in small teams and you like keeping your camera package small, I see these as a great option for you and a solid investment. They aren't the type of lenses that necessarily pay themselves off through rentals or being a fancy option on your gear list to up your kit fee. However, they will unlock an interesting and versatile look for your work while also improving your quality of life by being easy to travel with, especially if you are someone who flies for work around the world. I honestly don't see lenses needing to get any smaller than this when it comes to a cinema lens design. I also hope Thypoch fills out this set with a few more lenses because I'd personally love to see some middle focal length added, like a 40mm and a 65mm, to give even more versatility overall. If you own lenses that you are satisfied with already, the Simera-Cs are not necessarily going to change your life or the course of your career. You don't need cinema lenses to shoot great work. If you are, however, interested in picking up a set of these lenses, you can use my code below from now until December 3rd, 2024 to get free shipping on your new set of Simera-Cs or any other products on Thypoch's website. Thank you guys so much for watching.